Hi, I'm Stephanie Moore with Unity Point Health, and I'm joined with our returning guest, Dr. Rosa. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
So today we're talking all things antibiotics. It kind of can be a complicated subject, so let's just start from the basics. What is an antibiotic?
So an antibiotic is a type of medication that is used to treat infections caused by bacteria.
That's a great explanation. So what's an antibiotic treat? We kind of go into that because I think there can be debate on it.
Yeah, so an antibiotic will treat an infection caused by bacteria, which is different than an infection caused by a virus. So bacteria are tiny types of organisms, but they are distinct from viruses, which are actually even tinier. And antibiotics have absolutely no activity against viruses.
Do you think there's some confusion around the general public on I need an antibiotic because I have fill in the blank, but it's actually wouldn't help them?
Yeah, so one of the frequent things that can affect people and that lead them to seek their medical providers is that they seem to have gotten a cold, and after that cold they have a cough, and that cough just doesn't go away, and they're like, oh, this cough, just give me an antibiotic for a cough to go away, and that doesn't really help. When you have a viral infection, something like a bronchitis, you have pharyngitis, sometimes symptoms can be bothersome and last for quite a few weeks, and they will not go away with antibiotics.
So let's talk about some of the illnesses that an antibiotic would be able to treat.
Yeah, so there are certain types of infections in your throat. So strep throat, that is caused by bacteria. That is something for which an antibiotic would help. There are also times when people have pneumonia. Pneumonias can also be caused by bacteria. That is something for which an antibiotic might help. Certain types of ear infections and sometimes sinus infections can also be caused by bacteria.
And then let's go on the flip side of that. What are the common illnesses that people may experience that an antibiotic wouldn't be able to help?
So I just said strep throat is caused by bacteria, right?
Yep.
But actually the overwhelming majority of throat infections are caused by viruses. So the majority of pharyngitis are caused by viruses. The bronchitis is another example of infections that are also caused by viruses that you do not need to get antibiotics for. It's a little bit trickier when it comes to sinusitis, so that one, that is something that you really need to talk through with your doctor. But in general, I would say that most infections of your throat are actually caused by viruses. Bronchitis, that's a viral infection.
Of course, people are going into the doctor for all kinds of reasons. Is there some misconceptions out there that we want to clear up?
Yeah, so like I was mentioning, certainly getting a cold or getting bronchitis is something that can be extremely bothersome. And at some point, you might experience symptoms for weeks after you had that initial infection. And so a common thing that we see is that people just saying, oh, I have a cough. This cough doesn't go away. Will an antibiotic help? Another frequent misconception is around allergies. People are like, oh, I get all this, drip at night. Will antibiotic help? Well, no, that might be an allergy. An antibiotic would not help. So those are common ones that we see.
So someone goes into the doctor, they decide to make the appointment, come in. What are they going to expect when they go in there and they're having maybe some of these symptoms?
Yeah, so as your providers, what we are really trying to get a sense of is where is an infection located and how severe is an infection. So for example, we would look at your ears, look for signs of infection there. Definitely take a look at your throat, and depending on how things are looking there, sometimes even get a swab of your throat. Take a good listen at your heart, see if it's beating too fast. Take a listen at your lungs and hear if there are any sounds of buildup. So essentially a good exam, a good examination of these body parts.
So you're really trying to narrow down, is an antibiotic even necessary during this visit?
Yes, exactly. And we're trying to establish, where does it seem that there's infection, and will an antibiotic potentially help for something like that?
Okay, let's say you aren't prescribed an antibiotic. Some people can feel a little down, like they made the appointment, they've been feeling sick for a while. But at some of our clinics, we're handing out these spread joy, not germs, kind of care bags. Can you talk about these and maybe what people would expect in this bag, and if they don't get a bag, just some common things they can do at home?
Yeah. So, again, when someone is having these symptoms, right, we get it. It's bothersome, when you're having a cough, when you have some postnasal drip, all of those things can really make you feel sick. And what we're trying to say is an antibiotic will not help those things go away. Actually, what can help you what can make you feel a little bit better is to control the symptoms. So that's why we have we call them wellness bags. And so really the contents of these bags are just things that can potentially make you feel a little bit better and also prevent those ones around you from getting sick. So
yes.
What do we have? So we have lozenges for your sore throat because yes, that it hurts, so we want to
feel better.
make you feel better. We all know what it feels like to have those really chapped lips when you're in the middle of a cold, so we have that. And we also have this nasal saline, because again, if you're having all of that drip, then you just help get some stuff out, and it does, it relieves some of that congestion that you can feel sometimes when you're having a cough. So those are things that can make you feel a little bit better. And then this couple of stuff, can help you, from spreading infections, spreading germs to others, so hand hygiene, cannot say hand hygiene enough, and also some Kleenex so that, for your runny nose. Yeah. We also have, we do also include, as part of our package here, some instructions on where you, on what you should do to determine if you actually need to go back to the doctor, some signs of things that might be potentially more serious. So we also have that guidance there. But so as you can see, these are all stuff that it's actually found over the counter. So we're hoping that if you go to one of our locations, one of our clinics, you get one of those ones. But if not, it's actually, just stuff over the counter.
Is there a certain brand of cough drops, or I know these are like an extra strength brand or of a lozenge. Is there a certain brand we recommend?
Or just, not really, because it's just to help. It's really just to help.
Okay, so now let's go on the other side of things. You get an antibiotic and you don't need it. This, people might say, it's fine, it's just an antibiotic. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it actually can hurt you.
Yes, so that is also one very common misconception, and something that can really hurt you and really hurt others around you. So an antibiotic is not just an antibiotic. An antibiotic is a substance that impacts your body, and it impacts also the good bacteria that live in your body. So it puts you at risk of acquiring infections like C. diff, which is a type of infectious diarrhea. So you essentially wipe out some of the good flora that you need in your gut, and then all of these other bacteria are able to emerge and give you a really, really bad diarrhea. So that is one that we worry a lot about. And then the other thing is resistance. So people usually tell me, oh, I think I'm going to build up resistance to an antibiotic. And no, the bacteria are the ones that build up resistance, so that if you use an antibiotic and you don't really need it, now you've exposed some bacteria in your body to that medication, and then in the future you may not be able to use it. So development of C. diff, diarrhea, and resistance are very real concerns that we have when people get antibiotics.
So let's do a recap to wrap everything up here. It really does matter if you're prescribed an antibiotic or not, and there just are some things you can just do at home too.
Yes, exactly. Above all, we want to make you feel better. We understand that when you're having a cold, that when you're having bronchitis, you don't feel well, but getting an antibiotic will not help. It's symptomatic relief what will help get you through. And so these are things, we put them in our bag, but they are also things that you can find over the counter.